This is my family. That's my wife and daughter, which, I mean, going back, almost losing my wife, there were some moments where I thought my daughter was a curse. I'm like, my wife is literally dying, you know? And now when I look back, obviously I have some guilt of that thought, because I realized, no, she was actually a blessing. That if it wasn't for my wife nearly dying after giving birth to my daughter, we would have never really dug deep and actually uncovered the source or sources. So after spending over $500,000, lots of doctors, you know, all the emotional trauma of her almost dying, and you know, all that, I'm here to say to you that really we got to look at it as either everything is happening to you in life or everything is happening for you. And here's what I mean. To you. God, why me? Why is this happening? I can't believe that this keeps happening to me. Versus for me, like, oh, this is actually part of my path, and this is going to help me help others in the future, or et cetera, right? And it's one thing to intellectually understand, okay, yeah, if Dr. J says for me, you know, not to me. It's another thing, though, to move that in your heart and really understand, no, this is actually for me. I look back at all the quote unquote troubling, stressful times, and I realize that those are pivotal moments that shifted my path to get me to here today to be speaking to you about things that are going to change and transform your health. And if I hadn't had those tragedies, quote unquote, actually blessings happen, that this wouldn't be there. So just think about that. But I want to cover really the 3 secrets to improving your health with getting rid of parasites. So if you want to know that, let's buckle up and get to it. Now, there might be some gross pictures in here, so I apologize, but honestly, parasites, in the words of Shrek, if you ever saw that Pixar or Disney movie, Shrek, he says, always better out than in. And that's really the whole theme of parasites. So this comes from Times. This was a doctor removed a 15-centimeter long parasitic worm from a man's eye. Now, a man in India went to a doctor complaining of pain and itching in the eye. Turns out he actually had a 15-centimeter long parasitic worm living in his eye. The worm is believed to be a type of roundworm that is spread via mosquito bites. So remember that, mosquito bites. This is an article from the Siberian Times. And this was July of last year, 2018. It says worms frozen in permafrost for up to 42,000 years come back to life. So worms discovered in Siberia after being defrosted, placed in petri dishes, researchers observed as 2 of the unfrozen worms began to move and even eat again. At 32,000 and 41,700 years old, they earned the titles of the oldest living animals in the world. So parasites are very resistant. The blemishes moving around on her face. This is Washington Post, June of last year. Turned out to be a parasitic worm. So this woman noticed a small bump below her left eye. The bump didn't stay there. After a couple of days, it moved around above her eye. A few days after that bump disappeared, severe swelling began in her lip. The culprit, a parasitic roundworm transmitted via mosquito bite, traveling through her face. So it's a roundworm via mosquito bite. And you might be feeling like this. That's okay. Hang with me. There is lots of gems, but I just want to kind of throw out some news, latest news here in the parasitic world. So this actually came from the Washington Post, January of 2018. It says he ate raw fish almost every day until a 5-foot-long tapeworm slithered out of his body. And this is what it is. That's a toilet, cardboard toilet paper roll that they rolled the tapeworm up on, 5.5 feet long of a tapeworm. So pretty crazy. Now, what's interesting is when you look at cultures and eating something such as raw fish, there's natural anti-parasitics built into traditional food. So that natural anti-parasitic, wasabi. So if you have wasabi with something that could potentially have parasites in it, you're a lot less likely to be affected because that wasabi is a natural anti-parasitic. So there's things like kimchi and things that will also help. This comes from Live Science. It's May 2nd of 2018. It says doctors pulled 14 squirming roundworms from a woman's bile ducts. A little gross. A woman went to the hospital after 6 months of abdominal pain so bad that she could barely stand up, persistent fever, vomiting, and extreme weight loss. After originally being misdiagnosed and prescribed antibiotics, a CT scan at the hospital found 14 roundworms that had made their way out of her intestine and into her bile ducts. So they climbed from her intestinal tract up into the liver bile duct area. This type of roundworm, called Ascaris lumbricoides, can make its way into our intestines when we ingest fruits or vegetables contaminated with its eggs. So we're looking at fruits and vegetables can have parasites in it. We're looking at raw fish can have parasites in it. And the Ascaris lumbricoides, that roundworm, a female can produce up to 200,000 eggs per day. 200,000 eggs per day. Let that sit with you. I mean, that's just crazy when you think about it. So my life was really changed by parasite cleansing. I had a ton of health issues. I mean, nothing like my wife dealt with. So when we were together, I mean, it was clearly about her getting well, but I was along for the journey. We'd go to doctor's offices and be running tests, and I'm like, hey, I want to run that too. It's kind of tag teaming with her in this whole thing. But I had really bad skin issues, massive bags under my eyes, really dark purple marks that, I mean, growing up, people thought at times I got punched in my eyes because they were so dark. And that's really more of a parasite food allergy symptom. It's actually a food allergy symptom that is caused by parasites. Environmental allergies, food allergies, especially dairy. I used to not be able to put milk on my cereal. I mean, I don't drink cow's milk, but back in the day, I couldn't drink milk, and I put apple juice on my cereal growing up because that's what they told me. I took Tums for my calcium. I mean, the stuff I was told was like, whoa, whew, if I could go back. But you know what? That's all been part of my journey to help allow me to grow and learn. Again, is it to you or for you? I was diagnosed with ADD, ADHD, prescribed psychiatric drugs. Absolutely despised that, hated that. I vividly remember that. Actually wanted to take my life when I was younger as well too. And that transparent, that came to me a few, like 2 or 3 years ago. I'd pretty much blacked that out, or like block that out of my brain. And just as I continue to open up and really trying to raise my level of consciousness and awareness and things, that hit me one day, and I just started having tears in my eyes, realizing, wow, that was a pretty rough time. Really sensitive digestive tract, prone to getting sick, grinding my teeth, and just not feeling right. And those symptoms, every single one of them is a parasite symptom. It's like, wow. I mean, I remember, and not to be too graphic, but I remember having pain in my, anus, butthole, basically, going to the pediatrician, them saying, lay on your stomach, pull your pants down, let me look, and they're like basically spreading your butt cheeks, like, oh, you have some anal fissures, here, take this steroid type cream, rub it on there. And I'm just thinking, I'm like, that's another parasite sign, like, how many people have parasitic issues and have no clue? Now, clearly the news things I was going through, those are extreme. I mean, most people don't have these extreme, like, have 104-degree fever, I go to the hospital, do a CT scan, they find, 5 billion worms, climbing around me. Like that, these are news things, right? These aren't the typical thing. The typical thing is we have parasitic infections that are slowly dwindling our health. And so I was speaking at a seminar on stage, and I had just two practitioners, and had a doctor in the audience ask me a question. I was actually speaking about Lyme disease and hormones. This is 4 or 5 years ago, so a while ago. And I'm like, wow, either this doctor is really smart or he's a jerk. and so after I got done speaking, he came up and seemed really friendly, and we talked. And I was like, oh no, this guy's really smart. He just really wants to know the answer. Well, it turned out to be that Dr. Todd Watts. So I'm the guy like in that bluish color. He's in the purplish. And we went out to dinner with some mutual friends. And at dinner, he's showing me pictures of stuff on his phone. And I was like, whoa, what are those things? He's like, oh, there's, that's ropeworm. There's some roundworm there. There's threadworm, all these different types of worms that these patients are getting out of him. And he's like, yeah, I'm just seeing such huge results with clearing parasites out. And I'm so intrigued. I'm like, what are you doing? And he's like, oh, I have this herb that I brought in and encapsulated. It's called Mimosa pudica seed. I'm like, Mimosa pudica seed. It took me a good while to even get that name down, Mimosa pudica seed. I'm like, okay, well, I'd love to try something. So he sent me a bottle. And at the time, it came in like this pharmaceutical-looking bottle with just the label that said Mimosa pudica. I'm like, okay. I called him like, what is this? He's like, well, it's so sticky. It's an herb, and it's the only ingredient besides the capsule, and I have to have it, because it's so sticky, I have to have it hand encapsulated at a compound pharmacist. I'm like, okay, so it looks like a drug, but it's natural. He's like, yep, exactly. Like, okay, so I start taking it, and I mean, my life just changed from then. And as I became better friends with Dr. Watts, we were at another conference, and my brother was with me, and he's like, hey, why don't you partner with Todd and come up with some better parasite formulas? I'm like, that's a great idea, actually. And then Todd said, that's a great idea. And that's actually how we started the company. So even leading up to it, I actually told him, hey, I don't think it's a good idea to start a supplement company, just FDA and all the regulations. And luckily he didn't listen. And next thing you know, we're working together. So it's kind of a serendipitous type story. But I'm going to show some pictures coming up. So just a warning, if you don't want to look, turn away. I'll let you know when you can look back. But these were some of the pictures he was showing me on the phone. And I was like, what is those things? I mean, just like chunks of wormy looking stuff coming out. And I'll switch it off the slide. So if you looked away, you can look back now. But it was just that moment of, wow, what is that? And so he shipped me the Mimosa pudica seed bottle. And I'm at a seminar, and this is the Mimosa pudica seed there. Trevor or Lindsay can drop a link for you guys, and I'll talk more about that. But I started taking it 16, 17 days in. I'm going to a seminar. I'm not even speaking, just attending this one. And all of a sudden my stomach starts rolling. I'm like, ooh, what did I eat? I feel like I gotta go to the bathroom, and had some loose stools. The next day, went to the bathroom, and just that moment of like, oh, my stomach just doesn't feel good. Go to the bathroom is like, whoa, this wave of, I just feel so much better. And I go to wipe, I'm like, that didn't feel right. I look down, and there's these 2 long worms hanging from me into the toilet bowl. And they were dead, but they were Ascaris lumbricoides roundworms. And I'm sitting on the toilet, and my mind just starts racing. I'm like, Heather, it's my wife. I'm like, get over here. You have to see this. So I'm in a hotel room in the bathroom. My wife and daughter happen to be there as well. And then actually my brother-in-law was there too. So my daughter comes running over at the time. She's about 3 years old. And she's like, Dad, why do you have string hanging from your butt? I'm like, Heather, get over here. She comes over, looks, and is like, whoa, I'm just grossed out, but yet I can't look away. What is that? I'm like, these are worms. So I took some toilet paper, I grabbed onto the worms, just slowly pulled them out, flushed, washed up, and I'm like, hun, if I have these, a relatively healthy guy, I mean, who else has these? And I was working with, at the time, about 50 clients in the chronic Lyme disease space and clients. And I'm like, you have to get on this. You got to try this. I think this is going to be big. And it was one of the most transformative things that I ever added really to a protocol. And then that just started me down this path of better understanding parasites. And so for the next month and a half, I had piles of like these little 4 to 7 inch, maybe they're not little, but like 4 to 7 inch worms. Like it didn't even look like I had poop. It was just worms coming out. And then it stopped. And I was like, oh, phew. A month and a half later, like, thank goodness I'm done with that. Not a big deal. And then all of a sudden I started getting itchy butt, and my stomach started getting a little sensitive. I'm like, huh, what is going on? This doesn't feel right. So I went back on, and just, I have no idea why somebody would name a restaurant or a food place Itchy Butt, but I thought that was quite hilarious, and I would totally never go there. But, so I went back on Mimosa pudica seed, and all of a sudden, boom, piles of worms coming back out. I'm like, oh my gosh, I still have more. And then all of a sudden, after a month and a half, it stopped again. I was like, oh, it must be done. Then symptoms started coming back again. I'm like, wait a minute, what is going on? Like, I thought I cleared them out. Went back on Mimosa pudica seed, and boom, they started coming out again. And I realized, oh my gosh, I bet you it's the eggs that hadn't hatched, and they just keep hatching, and I'm not on stuff to kill them. So then they grow, and then they start getting issues. So I learned a lot through my own journey and also through clients' journeys. And secret number one, if you want to know secret number one, you can write this down. You can screenshot this stuff. as well too. Take notes, feel free. I should have mentioned that earlier as well. I just wanted to dive in. There's so much info to cover here. But secret number one is you have to be persistent and consistent with herbs. And the reason why is parasites will lay eggs. Like I said, the Ascaris lumbricoides roundworm can lay 200,000 eggs, the female, within a day. So let's say you kill the quote unquote worms that are there, but the eggs are still there. Then the eggs hatch and you're not on any products anymore because you're like, I don't see anything else. Well, boom, you're going to continue to have issues. So you're going to keep taking it down, but you want to be persistent and consistent. So there's no 2-day, 5-day, 7-day worm cleanse and they're all gone. This is a process, and that's a big piece to this. And I do believe a myth is that you know, a lot of people out there say, well, you need some anti-parasitic drugs. I don't think you do. I mean, the natural herbs that are out there are amazing. Now, could you start on some anti-parasitic meds or, you know, incorporate them in on the journey at some point? Possibly, but I'm a really big fan of natural products, and there's amazing things out there for parasite cleansing. Now, there are 3 different classes of parasites. There is the protozoa type, which is a single cell microscopic organism. So these are the tiny ones. There's the helminths, which are larger. They're multi-celled organisms that are often invisible to the naked eye. And then there's the ectoparasites. These are, they transmit parasites through biting and stinging, such as the mosquitoes you were seeing in the news clips, fleas, ticks, lice, mites, these type of things. So we're really going to hone in primarily talking about the protozoa and helminth side of things. But when you look at, there's a textbook here. It's called In the Light of Evolution, Volume 2, Biodiversity and Extinction. I don't expect you to get it, but in this book, they talk about that we estimate there are between 75,000 to 300,000 helminth species parasitizing the vertebrates. So anywhere between 75,000 to over 250,000 different types of helminth species. So that's just one, that's not protozoa, that's helminth. And the key takeaway here, remember this number. There are hundreds of parasite species that affect humans. Hundreds. And this is, we're going to just remember that. You can come around to it. So this came out of Reuters. This was November of 2018. This is a giant worm that they had floating for some research that they came out with. But the research team, the title article says, Gene Study Reveals Secrets of Parasitic Worms, Possible Treatments. But in this article, it says the research team compared the genomes of 81 species of roundworms and flatworms, including 45 that had never previously had their genome sequenced. So they looked at 45 different species of roundworms and flatworms they'd never sequenced before. And the analysis found almost 1 million new genes that had not been seen before, belonging to thousands of new gene species. This is 2018. Over 1 million new genes just from sequencing 45 roundworm and flatworm species they hadn't sequenced before. Okay, so just remember that, and come back to that on the testing side. This is the CDC, the Centers for Disease Centers for Disease Control. A little funny joke there. So this is Thursday, May 8th of 2014. It says parasitic infections also occur in the United States. Millions of people infected. And you can replace the United States with first world country, okay? Because I know there's worldwide people here. Most people think parasitic diseases, and I quote from the CDC, occur in poor and developing countries or are infections they might pick up on a trip to a foreign country. However, parasitic infections also occur in the United States. In some cases, affect millions of people. Often they go unnoticed with few symptoms, but many times the infections cause serious illnesses, including seizures, blindness, pregnancy complications, heart failure, and even death. Anyone, regardless of race or economic status, can be infected. So how do we get parasites? We get parasites through our food supply, just like the article said before, fruits and vegetables, meat, especially raw and undercooked. We get parasites through our water supply, Cryptosporidium, Giardia, all these types of bacteria and parasites and different things can be in our water supply. That's why it's so important to make sure you purify, filter your water. Soil. So just walking barefoot on the soil, right? This big earthing, grounding thing that's being popularized or been popularized. Well, just walking through your garden with bare feet, you can get hookworms right to your soul and right inside your body they go. Through the air. So sneezing, you're not just covering your mouth when you sneeze for bacteria and viruses, but you can actually literally sneeze out pinworm eggs to people. I mean, it's just disgusting when you think about that. And the pinworms are the ones that cause your butt to be itchy. That's what I had. And unfortunately, when I was cleansing, my wife's like, why is my butt itchy? I'm like, oh, sorry. She's like, oh my gosh. So believe me, if you have family in the household, if you have pets, it is a good thing to cleanse them as well. I always recommend who's ever, the most symptomatic with health issues, start first. Then a couple months in, you can introduce everybody else. But if you're all just kind of more wellness, then have everybody cleanse together because you just don't want to be sharing it back and forth. You can also get it through your pets, cats, dogs. I have a dog. I'm a animal lover, totally love animals. The thing I'll say is I don't let my dog lick me because see where animals lick, cats, dogs, and our dog does not sleep in our bed. So those are just, I know there's some people that probably don't want to hear that, but that is a higher likelihood to get parasites. And improper food handling, salad bars. A lot of them test positive for parasites and could be just the improper food handling and everybody touching stuff. And next thing you know, there's parasites in your salad dish or salad bar that you're getting at Whole Foods and you thought you were good. This comes from Fox News in 2011, actually. It says fecal matter found on 72% of grocery carts. Ooh. University of Arizona swabbed handles of 85 different shopping carts in 4 different states looking for bacterial contamination. They found 72% of the carts had a positive marker for fecal matter and 50% had E. coli. Woo! I've never been a fan of those hand sanitizers, but when you read that, you're like, what do we do here, right? So if you want to know what the best laboratory testing for parasites is, and hold up before you go spending money on kits, it isn't a slam dunk, but these are the best parasite lab tests out there. Parawellnessresearch.com. You're looking at about $300 for a test. It's about a $10 or $15 membership fee. And they're looking at stool and urine. GI Map by Diagnostic Solutions is also a good match, depending on where you can get it from, what practitioner. You're looking at $400 to $500. These are U.S. prices, so some might be limited where they can't ship outside the states, etc. And the thing I look at is, let's say that you run a test and it comes up negative. Well, does that mean that you don't have parasites? And I'm going to say no way, because here's the problems with lab testing. Conventional labs, they're slammed with samples. So when they're looking at a stool sample trying to identify parasites, they're trying to jam through 20 samples within an hour. So they're maybe spending 3 minutes on your stool sample, and if they don't see anything, well, then it's negative. I would say technicians aren't necessarily looking for parasites in first world countries. Therefore, they're not really going to find them because they're not necessarily looking for them. So I think training can be an issue as well too. And these are just my opinions. Take them or leave them. Hundreds of species though affect parasites. Do you remember that? There's no test when we're looking at like PCR, which is looking at fragments of DNA. There's no test that covers all these hundreds of species as research is continuing to pour out. So I just don't think we're advanced enough yet or ready. Maybe in 5 or 10 years we could be, but not all parasites have been genome sequenced when you're looking at PCR DNA testing. Not every bowel movement will parasites actually come out. There's parasites that are systemic in your body. They're in your brain. They can be all over your body besides just your GI tract. And every poop doesn't mean that every single worm that you have is going to come out as well. And this is probably one of the craziest things. When parasites die, certain kinds of them can release enzymes or will release enzymes that dissolve their own bodies. So let's say you do a stool sample and it's Wednesday night. You're like, okay, do the stool sample, let it dry, you pack it up, you get shipped out Thursday or Friday. That's going to the lab. They get it by, maybe Tuesday. It sits there for a couple days. Next thing you know, it's a week later. And then the technician's looking at it. Well, by then, even if there was a parasite there, they could have dissolved itself because of the enzyme really, it's a mechanisms so they can't become detected as easy. So it's pretty crazy when you really look into the parasite side. So instead of really spending money toward testing, I'm a big fan of parasite cleansing. Let's see what comes out and let's see how you feel. And it's not the best judge because only 30%, unfortunately, of parasites are actually visible to the naked eye. But that moment when I had to pull those 2 worms out of me in my rear end, I was like, whoa, I don't need a test showing me I'm like I see them. I see them there. So if y'all want to know a free parasite test, type yes in the chat. I'll make sure y'all are still awake. And if there's any issues on the tech side, Trevor, just let me know here. I'm just rocking and rolling.
Nope, everything's good.
Cool. We getting some interaction too. It's hard for me to see the chat here with the screens, but y'all still awake? So let's do the free parasite test. You're going to take 2 fingers, hold them up, and then you're going to find your carotid artery on the side of your neck. And if you feel a pulse, that's a positive for parasites. Yeah, there's a little sarcasm there, but it is some truth. So that's one of my friends, Dr. Todd Watts, one of his favorite tests is the pulse test. And if you don't find a pulse, you might want to recheck just to make sure you're alive. So there is some sarcasm with that, but honestly, I believe in everybody that I've worked with clinical wise and now really out to the masses, parasites are a modern day epidemic that is being missed, and cleansing has changed and transformed so many people. Now, clearly there's going to be parasites that are way more out of control with certain people and not as much with other people, but parasite cleansing has to be really in the regimen. So secret number 2 here, remember we're covering 3 secrets. The first one was be persistent and consistent. The second secret here is assume that you have parasites. So assume that you have parasites. This is Chris. The title of his email, which caught our eye, was "You Saved My Life." I was diagnosed with SIBO last March and have been suffering GI issues for many years, including gallbladder. Like you, did many of the available parasite cleanses. Went to Yale Digestive Diseases. The doc there wanted to put me on antibiotics. No, my ND agreed. My naturopath agreed. Accidentally listened to one of your webinars with Mimosa pudica and following the protocol. I was so miserable. I was so desperate at this point. I would have tried anything, even did the turpentine protocol. Ooh, I'd been making a record since starting the protocol of huge parasites I gotten out for a steady 3 weeks. If you ever want pictures to show what can come out of you, even if the stool tests I've had over the years were negative, I'd gladly send them. So he'd run tests and they always came back negative. My gallbladder now feels like it's working. No more discomfort when I eat fat. No more pain under the sternum. No more vomiting in the morning after drinking only water. I think these things were causing the bacteria to be off balance, which is why so many people have SIBO and other digestive diseases. I can't thank you enough. You saved my life. I can live and even feel good again. Please keep helping people look for parasites. So that right there, if you ever need inspiration to wake up, it's like getting an email like that. You're like, whoa, making a difference. So I want to go through mapping out the protocol and kind of let you know where things fit into the journey. Because I know you're probably thinking, wow, I got worms. I need to cleanse them. There's more than just taking anti-parasitic herbs. So as we look at parasites, I can't think of a better analogy other than thinking about like a terrorist and you have that mother cell. If you can take down the mother cell, like all the other terrorist cells basically disappear, you want to think of parasites in that way. That if you have mold toxicity, mold spores will live inside of parasites. So if you're trying to clear mold from your body, you have to parasite cleanse so that mold spores can't live inside of the parasites to keep replicating. So parasites are a necessity to deal with before you clear out the mold within your body. Heavy metals. Parasites are sponges for heavy metals. They'll absorb 6, sometimes 8 times their body weight in heavy metals. This is one of the reasons there's a massive epidemic right now of parasites, is because there's a massive epidemic of toxins. We share one atmosphere, specifically heavy metals, cadmium, mercury, lead, arsenic, all these different types of heavy metals that are unfortunately in our environment we pick up and we become toxic. Parasites are actually helping the body to absorb the heavy metal, but the issue is this: the heavy metals are still inside of you because they're inside the parasite, and the parasite is inside of you. And now we're getting the byproduct of the parasite causing its issues, releasing its toxins and its waste products. So if you're going to focus on detoxifying heavy metals, which I did for 2 years before even understanding that parasites was a big issue, you have to clear parasites first, and then the heavy metals that are in the parasites can be released. Then you can fully clear the toxins out of the body. So again, parasites before mold, parasites before heavy metals, and then the last one here is parasites before viruses and bacteria. There's a couple things to this. So Dr. Alan McDonald in research found that Lyme disease, the bacteria, Borrelia burgdorferi, can live safely, and does, within different types of nematode, which are worms, right? They're parasites, basically. So different larvae, worms, and eggs. Lyme disease can live safely within those types of worms. So if you've identified, wow, I've got a chronic infection like Lyme disease, you don't just jump on, whether you're going the pharmaceutical route or the natural route, something to try to kill Lyme. You got to take away the thing that's protecting Lyme, which is parasites. And actually, heavy metals protect Lyme disease as well. So heavy metals form part of the biofilm. So if you're specifically looking at going after a chronic infection like Bartonella or Epstein-Barr virus or Lyme disease, understand detoxifying heavy metals and clearing parasites has to come first before you can get to that. Now, the interesting thing about viruses and parasites, and I hope you all are getting some great learning tips here tonight, is when you have a parasitic infection, it shifts the immune system to this one side called Th2. And when it shifts over to this one side, now the other side of the immune system is what's designed to go after viruses and keep those at bay and not stop them from replicating. When there's a chronic parasitic infection, shifts the immune system over into this Th2 dominant state, which then allows viruses to run rampant and replicate like mad. So if you're going after CMV, Epstein-Barr, these different retrovirus type viruses, have to go after parasites first to allow the immune system balance out, to then the immune system can start activating to go after the viruses. And there's certain viruses that actually live inside of parasites as well. So let's put a conclusion. So if you want to take a screenshot, feel free, or you can draw this out. This is kind of the final part of this drawing here. The first thing that we want to focus with is drainage, opening up the drainage pathways. That is making sure you're pooping, supporting your liver bile duct system, the lymphatic system. Then what that's doing is that's supporting the body to get it ready to then clear out parasites. So here's what I see. Whoa, parasites, totally want to cleanse. Let's do it. Oh my gosh, I'm seeing stuff. Boom, I crash. I don't feel good. Oh, whoa, what happened? It's basically you just jumped into killing. And the first thing you want to do is not jump into eliminating parasites or killing parasites. You want to support the normal drainage pathways. So you want to make sure you're pooping 2 to 3 times a day if you're in the health restoration phase. So if you have health issues and you're looking to improve, make sure you're going 2 to 3 times a day, not watery stools, otherwise it's too much. If you say, Dr. J, I'm actually pretty healthy, I'm just want to live longer and just focus on wellness, then 1 to 2 bowel movements is a good amount for a typical healthy person. When you're looking for health restoration, I'd bump that up just a little bit, poop 2 to 3 times a day. If that pathway is clogged, everything else gets clogged in the body. So make sure you're pooping. The next thing you want to focus with is the liver bile duct. Parasites love the GI, they love the liver bile duct. You want to make sure to open that up. Anything that gets clogged in that area is going to cause reactions. So opening that up, I like to do 30 days of supporting drainage. So you can write that down, 30 days of drainage. Then you can start going after parasites. I recommend a minimum 90 days of parasites, but I've had people that have had to do it over a year and a half. It's a massive infection within their body. And one thing I've noticed, like in my own journey, and as I've continued to progress and just my health continues to get better, skin and so many things, which I wouldn't even say were like that bothersome. But then when they improved and got better, it was like, whoa, it's just, just as if the clouds parted and sunshine came in, it's just a whole nother level. But I recommend 30 days of drainage. Then you're going to introduce parasites. Now, here's the key. It's not open up your drainage pathways and then you stop, drainage is going to come along with you for the journey. And that's what's going to prevent having a lot of crashes and a lot of symptoms that's going on. So secret number 3 right here, stay focused, hang with me. We got some more stuff to go through here on the phases. And then we'll get to Q&A. Secret number 3 is know the steps necessary to do before parasite cleansing, during, and after. So what do we do before? We open up drainage. What do we do during? Well, you need some kind of binders. The bioactive carbons are the binders 2.0 of the world, that they not only bind toxins, but they also repair. So they're more advanced than activated carbon charcoal or clay or something. So bioactive carbons. But the reason you need a binder is when you kill parasites, the heavy metals, you hope that most of them leave with the debris of the parasites when they leave the body. But in all reality, there's going to be some heavy metals that get released, and you don't want to recirculate them and absorb them somewhere else in the body. You want to bind onto them and pull them out, and that's going to be the safest thing. And then afterward, it's really moving into heavy metal detoxification, and then into that clearing up the chronic smaller type infections. So here's the wheel. If you want to take a screenshot of this, this is also a handout that Lindsay and Trevor sent out. I believe you'll see this in the handout. This is essentially the wheel of health, we can call that. So the first step, that 0-1 there, is prepare. That's opening up the drainage pathways. Step 2 is remove. That's really going after the parasites and pathogens. 3 is we're building up the body to really start supporting it to get into deeper detox. And then step 4, that green one, is that's really where we're getting deep on heavy metals and pesticides, radiation, pulling that stuff out. So phase 1, what I recommend is we're going to open up the drainage pathways. We're going to start establishing some energy within the body too, cellular energy. And this is going to help to reduce reactions. Now, there's some people out there that's like, well, I have to feel stuff so I know it's working. Great. Dose high, just jump into the parasite cleansing so you know it works. And then you can backtrack and retreat back to drainage. And then life will be a lot easier and calmer. Some people need that, honestly. It's probably more of a guy thing, but it is what it is. But what I recommend is always support drainage, always open up those pathways. It's going to be so much gentler. And then you're going to prepare your body. So there's 4 products I recommend in the phase 1 drainage side of things. The phase 1, we're looking at the kidney liver detox. That's that orange bottle, and intestinal mover. So that's supporting the bowel movement, and that's supporting the liver, bile duct, and kidneys. The dropper there, that's liquid bioactive carbon minerals. Actually, through testing, we found that it's really good for clearing glyphosate, really good for helping clear out heavy metals, really good for clearing out mycotoxins, which are the mold, what the toxin that mold produces. But primarily, the reason it's introduced here is it's really supportive to the body, actually having over 70 different types of minerals in a plant-based form that are energized, that can actually help just communication within the cell. So there's a lot of benefits to those minerals, but really it's just kind of establishing a baseline to get the body prepped, getting ready to go. And then that last thing there in the green bottle says bioactive carbon biotox. So bioactive carbons are specifically created from extracts of fulvic acid and humic acid by some of the top leading scientists in the world. And what these are, they're programmed for different things. So the biotox is specifically for mold, ammonia, which is a really high alkaline toxin, fungal and candida byproducts, and also helping to upregulate cellular oxygenation in the cell. It's a really good just general overall for the gut. So it really helps kind of establish better gut health. Intestinal mover helps motility. The kidney liver detox helps the drainage of opening up the liver, bile duct, and kidney area, and minerals just helps kind of that baseline. So that's phase 1. Now, you might not feel anything for that phase 1. You might be pooping some more, which is good if you're constipated, and you might feel a little bit of energy. Maybe your sleep gets a little kind of weird, and all of a sudden you get better sleep. Like, those are typical things. But I mean, a lot of people might not necessarily notice anything because you're supporting the normal drainage pathways. But trust me, I love doing that because that helps to really get you ready for phase 2. Phase 2, that's where you get into the gut scrubbing. That's where you get into the parasite cleansing. You know, you're really supporting clearing out these endotoxins that are within the GI tract. So now it looks like a lot more stuff, but we're staying on the biotox, staying on the kidney liver detox and the minerals. And now there's 4 different products that we're adding to phase 2, if you will. So the 2 products in the middle there, Formula 1, that is an anti-parasitic formula. It's got a bunch of different Ayurvedic herbs in it: clove, neem, vedanga, holorina, triphala, our bioactive carbon mix as well to protect it. This was actually formulated, the original formulation came from the Secretary of Health in India. We actually just interviewed him this last week. Half my team's over in India. They're coming back actually tomorrow. So super excited to get Dr. Todd Watts back in the States here from his India trip. But then we kind of enhanced it with the bioactive carbons and made a few tweaks there. So the Formula 1 is definitely an amazing formula, really good systemic herbal formula for parasites. You see the mimosa pudica seed. That's the one that gets all its recognition because, oh my gosh, you know, it's amazing for parasites and stuff. But think of mimosa pudica seed as it's a gut scrubber. It's a gut grabber. It's just a real good gut support. And it's not rough on the GI. So it's not like a psyllium husk or something that could scratch your intestinal lining. It's very sticky, gelatinous, but it has some herbal components to it that make it, that have anti-parasitic properties throughout the body too. So it's not just the GI. So if you're looking at, okay, Dr. J, I love the idea of parasite cleansing, and you know what? I'd love to do like the whole protocol, but I just want to go after parasites. Great. The 2 formulas I'd recommend is mimosa pudica seed and Formula 1. But when you incorporate the other things, you're going to get better results. You're going to feel better. So the green bottle there to the right, second one from the right to left here, is bioactive carbon foundation. Now that one binds on heavy metals. So when you kill parasites and you get the heavy metal release, the foundation is going to bind on to that. It also has some viral, retroviral support. So any viruses that get stirred up or retroviruses, that's going to help support that as well too. And then the lymphatic detox. Lymphatic detox is really supporting the lymphatic system to open up and move. That's where a lot of pathogens are that can live in your lymphatic system. That's actually where a lot of the immune system is as well. So it's just getting a little bit deeper. So that is essentially the first 2 phases of the cleanse. So I'd love to help answer any questions. And if you've got, Trevor, if you want to post a link in there or coupon code as well, I'm sure your audience would love that. Let's just look at the chat here. Are there any pharmaceuticals you'd recommend as well? I personally don't. However, some popular ones would be ivermectin, praziquantel, Alinea, pyrantel palmate. I think that's a decent over-the-counter that can help with pinworms as well. I don't think there's necessarily a need for it. Now, 5 years ago, if you would have asked me, hey, drugs, I would have been like, oh my gosh, the devil, stay away from me. I feel like I'm getting a little bit more emotionally intelligent where, you know, there's a time and place. And if you know, maybe there's a really severe parasitic infection, you need some help with anti-parasitic medications, they're there, you know, just got to find somebody to help you.
Jay, let me fire a couple of these at you because I've got ones that were come in by email as well. What are the most common symptoms of parasites in the body? Is there something that is or is it just so widespread? There's no such thing.
There's a lot of symptoms. I can pull up. Well, let me rattle some off, and if you want to know more, I can pull up some sheets too with some info. But essentially, any GI disturbance, so constipation, diarrhea, or the going back and forth. Typically, parasites are always going to be related to GI stuff. A lot of mood things. So there's a book called Your Brain on Parasites, and it's a black cover on Amazon. And they really go into the research about how parasites actually change your thoughts and moods and personalities and things like that. So somebody that's dealing with like anxiety, depression, OCD, bipolar, I mean, that could be literally parasites that are then, you know, creating that. Sugar cravings, especially having to eat often. It's important to know, like, that's not your body that actually is wanting the food, it's the critters inside. So that's a great time to throw some antiparasitics down the hatch to surprise them, and then, you know, wait 20 minutes, then you can eat because you're more likely to get those nutrients. Because when you break down, Trevor, when you break down the word of parasite, the Greek meaning is one that sits at another's table. So they're basically stealing nutrients, they're stealing things from you, and we can't let them run the show. Grinding teeth, drooling at night. So when you sleep, parasites get active at night. So typically waking up and can't fall back asleep, waking up in the middle of the night, those are types, having a hard time actually falling asleep, jacking the cortisol up at night. Parasites do that. But then you'll grind and clench and drool as well. Restless leg syndrome, skin issues, purple bags under the eyes, food allergies, food sensitivities, any food allergy, food sensitivity. I'm thinking parasitics, parasites for sure. Especially dairy allergy. So there's a ton of symptoms. Sinuses, we're actually finding in our latest research here, strongyloides. So that's a parasite that loves the liver bile duct. It loves muscle belly. So if you work out and really sore and achy afterward, sometimes it can be parasites actually living in the muscle belly. They're getting irritated, causing those symptoms. But we're actually finding that that's sinus issues. So instead of the whole Marcons, multi-resistant Staph aureus type stuff, actually finding parasites up in the sinuses cause a lot of biofilm and snot production too.
Jay, this blows my mind, I have to tell you, because I mean, I knew nothing about this, and I can't take it in. I mean, some of those photographs, I actually had to turn the screen off because I'm really squeamish. But it's unbelievable. I mean, for someone coming into this who knows zero about it, it's really hard to take it in. Yeah.
Yeah. It is overwhelming, honestly, and I totally get like the kind of fire hydrant hose overflow. I honestly, just want to share as much as I can in a short period to help y'all on your path of health and healing. So
incredible, folks. Listen, just so you do know, there's 10% off any of those products that you saw. The link is at the top of the chat, and there's 20% off the full package of everything. Okay, that is the button at the side. So there's 20% off if you get the whole package, and 10% if you want to pick and choose an individual supplement. Let me a couple more questions. Is the parasite cleanse safe for people with blood pressure? Someone is asking, Jay.
Yes. Yep.
No problem at all. Okay. Excellent.
Yeah. The big thing to always think about is, and this is not just our microbe formula stuff, any medication and supplement keep 2 hours away from each other. So if you're on any type of medication, the supplements, they're very, I don't know if there's really any meds that are contraindicated as long as you keep them 2 hours away. Just don't take, and the bioactive carbons, just real quick, they're kind of like charcoal, but they're more advanced. We say don't take them with meds. It's not because they'll actually bind the meds. That's why you can take them with food. They'll actually cause enhanced absorption of the meds, and medications are dosed based on how normal absorption. So you could potentially overdose because these are actually, the bioactive carbons are actually upping the absorption. So you can take supplements with bioactive carbons. That's awesome, right? You increase absorption. You just don't want to mix meds and supplements together ever.
Okay, makes a lot of sense. Carol is asking, can Mimosa pudica eliminate parasites in the brain?
So there is, because there's hundreds of species of parasites, I don't believe any one product will clear everything out. Mimosa pudica is amazing. When I was on it, I actually had I had like hardening of the end of my nose and swelling. I got like, if you get lots of boogers or like even scabs inside the nostrils, that's a parasite sign as well too. So there is, like I said, a chemical constituent that does have a whole systemic effect. However, Formula 1 is going to have a stronger effect. And then we have another formula coming out, which is specifically for strongyloides, liver flukes, blastocystis hominis. It's called Formula 2. That's going to be out. We're looking at, I think, a few weeks right now. And that's a liquid tincture. So I think it's always good to, not just rely on one thing, but to kind of rotate. But they all have systemic effects. Probably that Formula 2 is going to be the most for brain, and Formula 1 would probably be second on the list.
Okay, fantastic. Jay, yes, there will be a replay video that you're asking there. You will be emailed a link to the replay. Carol is asking, do parasites leave behind bacteria that will need remediation after the 30-day protocol?
Yeah. So when you do like when you do the starter detox protocol, when you click the link that's there, and if you're watching the replay, I'm sure they can post it below. But if you decide, hey, I'm just going to dive into the whole starter detox protocol, I think you'll get the best results. but that's like 4 months. That's not a overnight thing. So 30 days is opening up drainage. Then we get into parasites, and then, moving forward from there. So this isn't a quick fix type thing by any means.
Sure.
You'll get results Formula 1 and Mimosa pudica seed, but I'm always looking at, I want to minimize as many symptoms as possible. And when you kill parasites, you're going to release bacteria, viruses within. When I was cleansing, I actually got an outbreak of chickenpox shingles from my pubic bone up into my armpits, and then symmetrical. I actually had an outbreak of that. And what I realized was, wow, the chickenpox I was exposed to when I was a kid finally coming out, where our immune system could then clear it out. And I think that's where people get re-exposures of these things constantly. They can't clear them out because they're harboring, they're living inside of a parasite. And if we clear that protective mechanism away, it unlocks and allows our body to, really actually get deep down into these things we need to clear out.
Incredible. Jason is asking, is this safe for 12-year-olds, Jay? Is this safe for children?
Yes. So for kid dosing, so you can write this down. Let's look at a 10-year-old, for instance, and let's say they're 100 pounds. So when I'm talking about a child, think about the weight of a child more than the age. But if they're typical weight, typical age, then you're fine. But a 10-year-old that's 100 pounds roughly, you're going to dose half dosing of an adult. So for instance, Mimosa pudica seed is 2 capsules twice a day. If you are a 10 or a 12-year-old, let's say 100 pounds, then you're going to work that child up to 1 capsule twice a day, because that's going to be half the dosing. If it's let's say a 5-year-old, 5 or 6-year-old, and they're 50 pounds, then you're going to work them up to a quarter dosing of an adult. And then if the child can't swallow capsules, then you just want to mix stuff with it, or, Mimosa pudica seed is actually really thick and gelatinous. So you want to mix it typically with kids' maple syrup. Otherwise, if you're an adult, olive oil or avocado oil. You don't want to mix it with water because it gets too gelatinous and it's really hard to swallow.
Okay. Barb is asking, are these supplements okay if you have chronic kidney disease?
Yes. In those cases, I just wouldn't try to push it really fast and hard, because you don't want to the kidneys. So essentially when you look at, and I can always come back on and help out kind of with the drainage concept a little bit more if you need, Trevor. But when you look at drainage, basically the liver processes toxins phase 1 and 2, and then dumps it into the bile, which they call phase 3. If the bile's not moving, then it backs up and dumps it into the bloodstream. When it dumps it in the bloodstream where we don't want it, then it goes to the skin. So you get skin issues. It goes to the kidneys, and then you get kidney problems, and it goes to the brain, and you get the brain fog, memory issues, and, thoughts and all that stuff kind of change up. So anybody with kidney disease, I'm always looking at the liver bile duct, making sure that's opened up, and then supporting the kidneys. So the kidney liver detox would be great. As far as when you start getting into the quote unquote killing immune support, and detoxifying chemicals out, you should be fine. Just go slow and low. There's no need to sprint and try to overwhelm the body. Okay,
excellent. Donna is asking, at what age, what's the youngest you would recommend that you start a child if you reckon they have parasites? What's the youngest you could do this?
It's a great question. I mean, really, a baby that's born, you can feed it to mom, and mom is breastfeeding, that then the baby gets it that way. So you want to be slow and low though. I don't recommend parasite cleansing or detoxing while pregnant. I usually don't recommend that when you are breastfeeding either, but the older the child gets, and it depends on if the mom's ever done this before, but that's always a possibility. But then as you get a little bit higher, it just kind of depends on when the kid can swallow capsules. As soon as the kid can swallow capsules, it makes it way easier. Until then, you're basically mixing powders, you're using tinctures and things. So, I mean, it can be done actually pretty early. It's just going to be a lot more limited. You're not going to, be doing a lot of stuff necessarily the younger they are.
Okay. Patty is saying she has hemochromatosis. Is there a connection with parasites possibly? And is it okay to take the supplements with that? Yeah,
I don't know of any contraindication, for the supplements. As far as what the link is, I don't know if it's a direct link of parasites. I mean, when I look at, because I get this question a lot, Dr. J, I've been diagnosed with fill the blank in. What do I do? I'm always looking at what's the source or sources of your health issues. And I see parasites being a massive one, toxins, other chronic infections such as bacteria and viruses. And then I would say the fourth one is mold, which is environmental, whether house, work, school. And then that ends up having mold in your body that then produces mycotoxins. So I think it's good to, if you get a little tunnel vision on this is what I've been diagnosed with, it's kind of good to break that out and just think, what's the source or what's the sources? So I don't have a clear, that's going to be the cause as much as the protocol would absolutely help.
Okay. You mentioned dairy allergy, Jay. Could you say a little bit more about that?
Yes. So parasites love the milk protein specifically. So when you are eating food, and let's say you have a protein, your body wants to break protein down into amino acids. The amino acids then are used to then manufacture neurotransmitters. Neurotransmitters are the serotonin, dopamine, epinephrine, norepinephrine, right? The happy hormones, these things that keep our psychological state good. So when there's those issues going on, you can look at the fact, because there's a lot of some practitioners that will dose amino acids, but I'm thinking, well, what's causing that issue in the first place? And it comes back to parasites. So parasites love proteins, and they'll consume the proteins. Then when they consume the proteins, our body can't get the amino acids because the parasite took it. So that's where if you supplement amino acids, you kind of bypass that to get it, so the parasites can't get it. But the thing is, you want to really kill the parasites so they can't steal the protein from you. But they have a huge attraction for milk protein. So when you have a milk allergy or a dairy sensitivity, it's almost always parasites. Dr. Todd Watts, my good friend, he had a severe dairy allergy, like massive. And then as he cleared parasites out, it disappeared. So,
wow. Mark is asking, the marketed starter protocol, is that for 60 days or 120 days? How long does that last for?
120 days. Yep.
Okay. Excellent. So 4 months, Mark. Delia is asking if these pills could be used in dogs to remove worms. Is this a natural way of doing that?
So with dogs, you're not going to use the whole protocol by any means. But most of pudica seed you can give to dogs. If the dog will just swallow a capsule, it makes it really easy. If the dog's going to chew the capsule, a lot of dogs will just, swallow and not chew at all. That's easy. But if the dog's going to chew it, because my dog's little and she likes to chew, but then she can't, it gets weird, she'll spit it out half the time. So yeah, dogs can have mimosa pudica seed, but I wouldn't say that this is specifically made for animals.
Sure. Ted is asking, any side effects with the herbs?
Die off. That's always anytime you're going after parasites, it's typical to get some times where all of a sudden you have a couple loose stools or your stomach feels a little sensitive. Maybe you get sensitive to some foods that you weren't sensitive before, as you're clearing them out. Sometimes you might get brain fog. There's a lot of symptoms that could pop up, but the more you support the drainage pathways, the less and bind onto these toxins that get released, the less likely you are to have any symptoms. Okay.
Nora is saying she has a mild allergy to cloves. So could she still take the Formula 1 okay?
That's interesting, because is the body actually have an allergy to clove, or is the parasites reacting when you take clove and then that feels like an allergy? And I don't know that answer, right? But it's an interesting question. If you are extremely sensitive to clove and can't handle it, I would not recommend Formula 1 because there's clove in it. Now that being said, again, is it the parasites that are reacting? And then, because this is what happens with the dairy allergy. So parasites eat the milk protein and then they produce a toxin that then the body reacts to, but the brain's like, wait a minute, it's the dairy you ate. That's what gave me the reaction, but it's actually the parasite toxin released from the parasite eating that milk protein. So it gets a little questionable, if you will, of what the actual source of an allergy is.
Susan is asking, does this interfere at all with CBD oil, cannabis oil?
Nope.
No issues there, Susan.
Nope.
Another one here. We're near the end, folks. We've been running for an hour and a quarter, so I don't want to keep Jay too long, and it's already 12:15 here in the UK. So, someone
you're a rock star, Trevor.
No, we're used to it. Georgianne is saying she's trying to heal advanced basal cell carcinoma naturally, but is having a very difficult time. Is there any way a parasite cleanse might help her body to heal?
My expertise is not in cancer.
Okay.
However, from interviewing people that do have expertise in that area, parasite cleansing and detoxification are way up on the list for the importance of helping the body. So I don't see any reason why you shouldn't or can't. But as far as that's really not my area of expertise.
Okay. Lorraine is asking, what all is in Protocol 1?
Protocol 1. So if you click on the link that is posted there, it is microbeformulas.com/ is it LL10?
That's
I think live long.
And the top one, the live longer, is the whole package.
Okay. So when you're on that website, on the Microbe Formulas website, there is a detox protocol button, and that'll show you all the products in there. As far as phase 1, that is the intestinal mover, a bottle of the intestinal mover that helps peristalsis the bowels. That was actually that was a product that was developed by a pharmaceutical company. Our scientists used to work for a pharmaceutical company, and they spent over 10 years and $1 million on that product. And because it actually helped people get off of meds, they never came out with it. The NDA, the non-disclosure, actually expired, and so now we have it. So that's the intestinal mover. The kidney liver detox is the second product. Bioactive carbon biotox, so that's the binder, and then the liquid bioactive carbon minerals. So there's 4 products in phase 1.
Okay, Marianne is asking if brain fog could be a sign of parasites.
Yes, brain fog is also a sign, though, of the brain drainage clogged. So if you think about drainage funnel, there's a priority. Pooping is number 1. So if you're not pooping, everything above the funnel gets clogged up. That can't drain, right? The next thing up is liver bile duct. The next thing above that is the lymphatic system. The next thing above that, the top here, is organs and tissues. That would be the brain. So in order for the brain to drain, the lymphatic system has to be moving. In order for the lymphatic system to be moving, the liver bile duct has to be moving. In order for the liver bile duct to be moving, the colon has to be moving. So there's anytime there's brain fog, absolutely infection and toxins are going to come up. Parasites is going to be one of those infection things, but you got to make sure the brain is draining. So I would say brain drainage, infection, and toxins for that.
Okay, a couple more quick ones, Jay. Someone is asking if saunas can kill parasites.
When you're in a sauna, especially like an infrared sauna, the initial sweat within the first 5 minutes is actually when most toxins leave the body. The longer you're in a sauna, then that's actually warming your core temperature up, and that has the effect against pathogens. I haven't seen results necessarily on the parasite side. For bacteria and viruses, absolutely. Parasites, potentially, but I wouldn't say that's top of the list for a sauna.
Okay. Are the products vegetarian? Elisa is asking.
Yes. Yeah. All capsules are plant-based. It's a veggie capsule. And there's no animal products at all in them.
Okay, fantastic. And I'm going to end with this one, and it's just disappeared off my screen, actually. Fred is asking, in your opinion, honestly, should everyone be doing a parasite cleanse, or just those people who are reasonably sick?
Oh, no, everybody. So, I mean, when you look back, and this is a fantastic question. I so appreciate y'all being on tonight or today, wherever you're coming from. But when you look back at history, I mean, farmers would cleanse the animals every spring and fall, and at the same time, they would cleanse the family members. Well, somewhere that got lost in tradition, and now it's not even on the list of like parasites. I'm in a first world country, not an issue. So, and the reason that there's an epidemic, and this is the connection, the reason there's an epidemic of parasites right now is because there's a toxicity epidemic. I mean, the EPA of the United States has recognized over 85,000 different man-made chemicals. That's just the United States. Like, what else is out there that, isn't on that list? So there's so many chemicals now that it's creating an environment to then attract parasites. So I'm a huge fan of doing an initial, like more intense, longer term parasite cleanse. So minimum 90 days, but honestly, I think most people with health issues can benefit from 6 months of parasite cleansing. Then just look at maintenance. So if you wanted to just take 5 days over a full moon, once a month or once every other month, and just do some cleansing, because parasites get more active during full moons. You know how the tides change, the water tides change? Well, parasites are majority water, so their activity increases, which is why a lot of symptoms pop up around the full moon. But you could also just do it like twice a year, where you take 30 days to do a cleanse and then wait 6 months and then do another 30 days, right? So there's not necessarily the perfect way, but I always think of do an initial cleanse, bring the levels of parasites down. As you bring them down, just through your normal exposures, you'll probably get exposed, you get some, more parasites. And then as you periodically cleanse, you'll bring them back down and prevent them from ever getting built back up. Health issues come from when the parasites get out of control. So if we can minimize them getting out of control, everything changes.
Fantastic. Jay, listen, thank you so much for giving us your time. You're obviously, your knowledge is unbelievable. So I really appreciate you giving us this hour and a half that you've done.
Well, I appreciate you having me on, Trevor, and I'm just so appreciative of all your work and everybody listening tonight. So any way I can serve you, just let me know.
Fantastic. Thank you, sir. I really do appreciate it. Folks, I hope you found that interesting. It actually blows my mind what we've saw and heard tonight. So if you want to take advantage of those offers, fantastic. Whether you do or not, it's not a problem. But there's so much there to think about, and I myself actually am going to do this because interestingly, I've got an issue in my head here, if you see, and I stopped taking dairy about 2 weeks ago, and I thought, okay, I'll give it 10 days, no dairy, and it didn't really make much of a difference. So I went back on dairy yesterday, and my head exploded today. So and I should have known better, I guess, but it takes, like, I think a couple of months for it to slow down. But from what Jay's saying, I dread to think now what could be actually in there. So it's all very interesting, and it's something I'm going to do myself. So listen, thank you again for joining us. Really hope you enjoyed that. Hope you found it interesting. I'll speak to you all soon. Have a good night. Take care.